the local democracy reporting service is the big one. It's the part of the partnerships that's costing the most. It's 150 journalists across the UK. In simple terms, we pay, they provide, we all use. It's an agency, it's a virtual agency, because the stuff that the reporters write is not designed directly for an audience, but it will go through somebody's hands before it hits their audience. So in a BBC context, we'll look at it. If we like it, one of our people will upload it digitally or maybe turn it into radio. I'm kind of really excited about this, because when we trialed it in the Northeast for 3 weeks and in East Midlands, some of the stories that came out were just stories that we wouldn't normally get. And I think they're going to be the stories that will aggregate into national stories. I'll give you an example. Gateshead Council heard a report about a loophole in the way taxi driving is licensed. I won't go into the full details, but it made you sit up and think, really, is that true? And actually, Gateshead Council were discussing it, but it wasn't a Gateshead story. The loophole is a loophole in national law. I think our ability to look into an enormous pot of stories that are in the public interest and be able to find national stories is incredibly exciting. And at a time when we know that things like child sex exploitation can happen on a massive scale without people waking up until it's very late in the day, when tower blocks can go up in flames, and people say, well, how is it that people didn't know about this? I think there's a real imperative for us to get back into council chambers wherever we can, to actually hear what those elected representatives say and to hold them to account. Even if you're commercial, so you are, say, Trinity Mirror, you're like the Cron, you're a commercial news provider, even if you're uncommercial, if you are a small hyperlocal provider and you just manage to cover your costs, it doesn't matter. We have the ability to work together for the common good. And the LDRS is all about that. It's about public service journalism. It's not just about the BBC. It's about asking other people who are out there now to undertake a public service journalism mission on behalf of the British people. I don't think it's a sticking plaster, in the sense that we're committing to fund this across the charter. So that's who else could make that commitment apart from the BBC? And to say that we're going to put 150 reporters across the UK for 10 years, I think is a very meaningful commitment. It's not going to change the fundamental economics of local news at all. And it's not designed to do that, because it's not the BBC's business to do a market intervention like that. We're not regulators, and we've got to be very careful about how we do spend money in this space. Do I think it will go on like this forever? Well, the proof will be in the pudding. If the stories that come back are useful, that they have journalistic impact, that we can demonstrate they have a benign effect on democracy, if we look for other indications that it's having an effect, if ordinary citizens find out more about how their local lives are being governed, then I think we could easily say it's long term. But everything's subject to public value analysis, and the BBC's only funded in chunks. So all we can say at this point is we're very committed to doing it for this charter period. Beyond that, I couldn't say, but I would be hopeful, as somebody who's been involved with this from its very inception, that it does continue, because I think that where we can find spaces to work with partners in this area, we should try and keep on doing it, because collaboration, whatever happens, however people are going to make money and survive in the 21st century providing news, I'm absolutely sure that working together with other news providers is going to be part of the mix. I think we've always got to realize that we have much more in common than we have that makes us different. It's so easy when you're a journalist to say, well, I'm not a TV journalist, or I'm a public service journalist, or I'm not a radio journalist, or in the Venn diagram, you're looking for the differences. and you see those people as your editorial competitors. But if you think about the rest of the world and about mass providers of content, such as social media or Google, actually, our core values of the journalistic values of fairness and accuracy, of having expertise, of having a mission to cut through the waffle and get to the truth. We've all got that. And in the local sphere, we're nearly all very motivated to serve a particular part of the country. There's a community that means something to us. So inside the BBC and outside the BBC, actually, we have that. That is our shared DNA, and that is phenomenally important. The challenge we've got to get over is the mistrust of each other's working practices, or simply years of ingrained competitive behavior that makes us kind of almost want to not only beat people to the story, but also sort of like, wipe them off the face of the earth. The fact is that inside the BBC, we believe in a plural media. We want there to be lots of choice. We don't want ever to be the last person standing in a news market, because that looks terrible and it is a failure of democracy. So I think the more I've worked with people who are in newspapers or online publishing, the more we've developed trust. Trust is about understanding somebody else's point of view. The more we work with newspapers, the more we get the pressures that they're under. We understand the kind of challenges that they face that we're totally insulated from. So the big hurdle is trust.